Welcome to episode 3 of Actually Olympia, the podcast. Kellie, here we are again,
Number 3, and 3 is the magic number.
according to Schoolhouse Rock.
Yeah, conjunction junction. What's your function? Today's podcast is all about public safety. I'm excited to welcome the chiefs, Police Chief Rich Allen and Fire Chief Matt Morris, to the podcast.
Welcome, Chiefs.
Thank you. Yeah, it's great to be here.
So our first question is always about your origin story. So if you ever watched a lot of good superhero movies, they always have what their origin stories are. So
Ever watch what?
superhero movies.
Marvel, DC.
Okay. All right.
Trust me on this one, Chief.
Okay, I trust you.
Think
Yeah.
Thor.
All right. All right.
So origin stories are kind of how you got started. So maybe talk a little about how you got started in the business and how'd you end up here and why is this job meaningful to you? And maybe we'll start with you, Chief Allen.
Just because I made that comment, right?
Absolutely, because you made that comment.
All right. So I'm a local guy. Grew up here in Olympia. Went to Roosevelt Elementary, St. Mike's Junior High, and then graduated from Olympia High School. I've always wanted to be a cop. Ever since my first memory of being a kid, I watched cop shows. I pretended I was a cop. Just always wanted to. I wanted to be out in the community. I didn't want to be stuck behind a desk. I'm stuck behind a desk now.
But not for your whole career.
Well, no, not for my whole career, but just being out in the community and just the type of work. There's something that drew me to police work with, just helping people. And I know that sounds cheesy, and everybody says that, but that's the truth. People calling you when they need help, and you're the one that gets to do it. And there's something rewarding about that. So ever since I was a kid, this is what I've wanted to do.
Great.
Yeah.
Chief Morris.
Well, I have basically the opposite story as Chief Allen. So I moved around a lot as a kid. I was a military family. And when I got out of high school, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And so I joined the military. In the military, I kind of learned this bigger concept of a greater purpose.
Yeah.
Right. And so when I got out of the military, I looked for a career that kind of fed that greater purpose, something bigger than you, right? And something more important than just yourself. And the fire service is where I landed. And so I started my fire service career in Southern Nevada. I spent about 28 years down there. Been in Washington ever since. It's my 35th year in the fire service. And I wouldn't have changed a thing. I've loved every second of it. And definitely feeds the ability to make a difference in the community and help people and to serve. So yeah, that's kind of how I got there.
Well, the journeys don't matter, right? What we're fortunate is that we have you both here, right? So your journey's got you here to the city of Olympia, and as a city manager, I cannot be more happy with who I have as the chiefs in my public safety group. So just appreciate having you both here at the city of Olympia.
Yeah, I love being here.
Yeah, good.
Well, so you both lead agencies, uniform, badges, cars with sirens. So how do your two departments work together? What does that collaboration look like?
Well, I think over the years, we've been really able to figure out, and not necessarily me and him, right? But over the years, we've been able to figure out, when someone calls 911, when someone needs help, we've been able to figure out what's the best resource to send to them to help them. Sometimes it's the fire department, sometimes it's the police department. And that's just evolved over time. And when we get to a scene, there's many times that we'll ask for the fire department to respond with us,
Right.
and vice versa. And just over those interactions, all of our crews, all the employees just got to know each other, and they work really well together.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think it's really about the relationships, right? And we build those relationships in a lot of different ways, right? Whether it be on actual incidents or in training classes or in different meetings or groups or committees or community events. And so, police and fire share the common bond of public safety, right? And so
Right.
we have the same overarching bigger picture purpose in mind, and that is, trying to create a safer, healthier, community for everybody. And, we do different things, but, the greater purpose is the same.
So if you were a family, which sibling would you be?
Well, I think Chief Allen would definitely be the firstborn.
Clearly. That means I get to inherit everything.
Yeah.
That's it.
We
You
were
can.
the responsible.
I'll give it to you.
The responsible oldest.
Gray hair.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about your teams. So you both have some amazing employees doing amazing things in the community. So tell us a little bit about your teams and the work that they do in the community.
You can go first on this.
Tell
Old
us
sibling being
about
bossy.
Right. Yeah.
about our teams. Well, Olympia Fire Department's made up of about 125 people, all different kind of walks and talks, and we really embrace kind of the differences in all of our people because our unity and our strength comes from that inclusiveness. And we have people that work really hard, and they make a lot of personal sacrifice to really just get out there and serve, right? And we have great teams. We have new programs like our CARES program where we're trying to meet the community's needs for referrals and assistance that's not necessarily in the form of a fire engine in the traditional sense, and get people connected to the services they need. We have a really hard charging group of people that are just out there working hard to learn and achieve and do whatever they can to help people.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, they're all just sharing in this greater purpose of trying to help people. So it's an amazing group of people that works for the Olympia Fire Department. And so
Agreed.
we're very proud of them.
Almost the same answer. Insert police. Roughly 125 police department employees. Our most visible is obviously the officers that are out driving the cars, responding to the 911 calls. But there's a whole host of people behind the scenes making our department run. We have our professional staff not only working in records, but working in evidence, making sure the paperwork gets to the prosecutor's office, making sure that all the evidence that we collect is handled appropriately. We have our crew, much like they have CARES, we have our crisis response unit, unarmed first responders that go out there and help people in crisis. Just a great group of people, and they're all dedicated to this community and to public service. And, I didn't want to end up behind a desk, which I did, but what an honor to lead them. They're just great. That's the best thing about the department is the people. So
Awesome.
Just great.
100%.
I'd love for you both to go a little deeper about the culture of that makes that such a good organization. Those great people, and how you keep that culture. And we talk a lot about the why people do what they do.
I think that's a great question about culture. I think that culture is really developed and driven by what you believe in, right? And so culture, is defined by how you act and how you act as a group, and your actions are driven by what you believe in. And so we talk a lot about our shared beliefs and our common beliefs, and that we have our shared values, that we believe in things like professionalism and stewardship and compassion and integrity. And so we hold each other accountable to those values. And that's just the ticket to get in the door, right? That's the minimum qualifications for the fire department. You have to share in those values, and that's about the culture, right? And in the accountability that just happens between employees, that they hold each other accountable to those values and those behaviors that associate that. And so, I think when you just focus on what you believe in and your greater purpose, then the culture takes care of itself.
I know I let him go first on purpose.
Yeah.
That was a great answer again. And again, along the same lines, it's integrity. It's just coming to work for the right reason. And they're just dedicated and they want to help their community. And when we hire people, we're looking for values, right? We can teach the skill. We can teach them how to do the job, but we're looking for people who have integrity, who have that desire to work with the community, just have the sincereness and the mindset that they're going to hold themselves accountable to the community, to themselves, and to their fellow employees.
To each other, yeah.
And, if you hire that person, you can train the rest. And that's why we have such a great workforce.
Yeah, I would say, we talk a lot about hiring for the right attitudes, and then you can train for skill all day long, right? But getting the right people that are bought into your culture and bought into the way that we're trying to do things and are doing it, as you said, Chief, for all the right reasons.
Yeah.
Right? Those are the most important people we try to grab.
Yeah.
Right?
Because it's from the values you build trust. And if we can't trust each other, then we can't work together. So.
Right. 100%.
trust of the community as well.
Absolutely.
Because what you do.
Right. Absolutely.
Well, your groups of employees, different than other groups of employees, are exposed to a lot of trauma
Sure.
in their jobs. So they see traumatic things. They're exposed to a lot of traumatic things. So how do you go about just taking care of them physically and mentally, so they keep coming back every single day and just the best versions of themselves to do the work?
Sure. Well, I mean, this is a great area to show that we're, the public safety, police and fire really share. I mean, we've both entered into some recent agreements to work with outside agencies to help bring in health and wellness, for our folks. There's two pieces that play into the mental health and the overall wellness of our employees, right? That's the chronic exposure to the hypervigilance that they have to maintain, this constant state of awareness and vigilance. And then there's the acute injuries of the things and the hard calls that they go on and the things that they see. And so, there's this ability to take care of somebody in crisis, and then there's this ability to keep them in shape and keep them out of crisis. And we try to come at it from both of those directions.
That's been the biggest change in my career since when I
Absolutely.
started. And you can probably say the same thing.
100%.
When we started, if on the police side, if an officer had to use deadly force, they had that down kind of to a science, right? You get some time off, you go get some emotional help, blah, blah, blah. But it's like he said, just the constant exposure to the different traumas that people have builds up. And now we can spot that in an employee, we can get them help. And before, when we started, it was just, rub some dirt on it, walk it off, and come back to your next shift. And that was the expectation, not only from your peers, but also your supervisors. You just shook it off and back to work you went. And that's not, I'm happy to say that's not the case anymore.
Yeah.
And we're getting the people the help that they need. So that's been a huge advantage. We have, both of our departments have our own internal peer counselors, peer support. I'm sorry. Yeah. And then we contract with different professional providers to not only train those peer counselors, but to be available for our staff. So that's come a long way.
Well, I'm really grateful to the two of you and your teams that have spent a lot of time with me around things like PTSD and the trauma and the resources that you need. Because the most important thing to me, as all of our employees do our work, is that we leave this place whole.
Yeah.
And our employees get to go home feeling whole, and they get to the end of their careers feeling whole. And so to the extent that we've got to continue to put more resources there, we got to put more resources there. Because I agree, we're long past the days where, as you said, Chief, we rub some dirt on it, we go home. I think what we learned over time is those events just stack up and they add up, and it's accumulation of all those events over time that create the trauma. And I'm thankful for the science. I'm thankful for a lot of the work that's been done by your teams and the unions and how they've talked to a lot of us about that, elected and appointed alike, to get more resources to them. So,
Well, I think the most important thing we can do is just, try to break down the stigmas of it, right?
Yeah.
And make it okay and that it's safe, that it's a safe place to ask for help and be vulnerable in the organization. And I think that comes out of the employees themselves, right? And so we talk about the peer support teams, we talk about the labor groups, the movement and the drive to really create an atmosphere or a culture that makes it safe for them to get the help they need when they need it. It really comes from themselves, right?
Yep.
And as the director of the organization, I just do my best to support that and get the obstacles out of their way so that they can take care of themselves and provide them with the tools and the things that they need. Right? And from the city's perspective, that's what we just try to keep doing, is just support that. But it really is. It's a big shift in culture. I mean, we've seen it in society today. It's safer to talk about mental health today than it's ever been. It still has a ways to go by all means. And the public safety is probably just right there with that. So.
Yeah. This kind of old sentiment that I should be tough enough to deal with this and not get help.
Yep.
I think we're breaking through that finally, and people are seeing where they need the help, and it's okay to raise your hand and say, I need some help.
Yeah, I've known too many people I've known in my career and people I've worked with that have taken their own lives as a result of the work trauma. And one's too many and we can't have any more. So
Yeah. Agreed.
whatever we have to do to prevent that, we should be doing.
Caring for the people who care for the people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
Thanks for that. I appreciate that
Yeah.
that conversation.
So yeah.
Yeah. So let's shift a little bit and dig into like specifically into your work. You're both in the process of strategic planning. So with your staff and your staffing level. So talk about what you've learned from the process and what's your focus going to be over the next few years.
He's looking at me. I guess it's
You're
my
the
turn to go
oldest,
first.
sir.
I'm the oldest.
Yeah.
You're more senior.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a better way to say it.
So you're right. We're just now finishing up our strategic plan work. It came hand in hand with a staffing study that we did. And so we're focusing on 2025 to 2030. So that 5-year period. And there was 3 main takeaways for that. One is our internal culture. I really want to invest in our employees. They're out there, they do good work every day for the community. We need to invest in their professional development. We need to keep them up to date in their training and give them all the support that they need so they can keep providing the good service to our community. I want to strengthen the connection with our community. That's another focus area. We host community academies. So obviously we're going to keep doing that, maybe increase the frequency of those. We've made some advances in our social media presence, so we want to keep that going. And talk about our connection to the community. I'm really hoping that we can find the funding. I really believe that our community would benefit from a West Side police station, some kind of presence on the West Side, a public-facing presence where the community can go there and really do everything they can here at City Hall, but up on the West Side. So that's where my focus is going to be. And then obviously the third is going to be reducing crime. We're going to use data to inform our enforcement efforts, right? If we have a burglary spree on the West Side, we're going to dedicate resources up there to try and combat that. And one of the things I always want to do is I want to be future focused. I want to be forward leaning and try and anticipate what the next thing is coming, right? What, especially in technology. Technology is such a huge deal. Almost all the crime that we deal with has some digital component, and trying to stay ahead of the new gigawatt that's going to help us search the doohickey over here, right? So that's always
chief talk.
That's chief. That's about as
I was
technical as
tracking
I
with you
get.
the whole time, Chief.
Yeah,
I'm really impressed.
yeah. Thank you.
That's how my kids talk to me too.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
So just trying to stay ahead of that, and it's a changing landscape, and I just can't let our department get behind on that. So being future focused and leaning forward and trying to anticipate the next thing that's coming along. That's what we're going to focus on the next 5 years.
Well, and Chief, before you go, I mean, you talked about data, and data's not new for you guys either, right? I mean, how you use data, but you're a very data-focused department. You both are in terms of kind of driving needs. So you mentioned about data that kind of help you with certain things, but there's lots of ways you use data.
Yeah, we have CompStat that we call it, and we've been doing that for 20 plus years. And it's exactly what I described. We look at the crime rates throughout the city, kind of what's our typical 5-year average. Not that it's acceptable, but it's just what the average has been. And if there are spikes in any given crime or area, then we'll kind of shift resources up there. That's easier said than done. You don't have resources to do that all the time, but that's what we want to focus on. And we're looking at more things to track now. I want to start tracking response times. What goes hand in hand with our strategic plan is also a staffing study that we did, and very fortunate that the voters passed a public safety levy, also known as Prop 1. So we're going to get some additional council-approved police officers out of that. So we'll be able to shift resources a little bit better, but it's always a challenge.
And the staffing stage is really key to your strategic plan work too, right? So as you talk about, as you look for areas of focus, wherever those are in crimes, having more resources to dedicate, having a neighborhood unit that can be focused on neighborhood, not repurposed to something else because you have a staffing shortage, right?
Yes. Yeah. Whenever our patrol level gets low, we have to pull from our various specialty units because the patrol is the backbone, right? If someone calls 911, someone has to show up.
That's right.
And we need an officer to go. So that's the primary focus. When we start being able to hire those FTEs, the full-time employees from the Prop 1 funding, we'll be able to add some positions to our neighborhood policing, and that'll help with that. Another thing that we think that it'll help alleviate is these long response times. We're pretty good at responding to priority 1 and 2 calls for service, right? If someone is in immediate danger, we get there pretty quick. It's when people call and say, hey, my car got broken into last night. Yeah. Can you help me? I was gone on vacation and I came back and my house was broken into. Some of those calls, it takes us, sad to say, hours to get to based on our call volumes. So hopefully with the extra officers, we'll be able to get to those a little quicker. So that's another data point that I want to start tracking and measuring.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell the community about the community academy you mentioned.
Yeah, it's we've been doing it for a while. We had to take a little pause during COVID. It shut down like everything else shut down, but we're ramping that back up again. We just did one earlier this year. It's a 10-week program. About once a week, we get community members together and we just show them different aspects of the department. We talk about our hiring and training unit. Obviously, we talk about our patrol unit. They take a tour of the department. We have people from the legal side, like our prosecutors, and come and talk about how people are held accountable. We give them a little taste of what it's like to roll around with a suspect. We don't have them roll around with a suspect. That's one of us, obviously.
Yeah.
But we give them a little training in that. And it's a great way to get a peek inside the department and see what we're all about. So
it's that openness, right? I mean, one of the things that even came out of the reimagining process, which we'll talk more about, was about opening up kind of that mystery of what the police department is. And so I appreciate that you're doing those things. And you've even had some open houses for other city employees to come into the police department, and you invited them into your space to learn more about, to teach their coworkers about what's going on in the police department.
Yeah. And I'm shaking my head and taking credit for it, but that's obviously all of the great staff at the police department, right?
Yep.
Our community policing unit really goes out of their way to try and involve not only the community, but other city employees as well. So yeah, we've hosted open houses, not only for the public, but also for city employees to come in and take a look. So.
Well, and one other thing you mentioned, Chief, is your social media presence. And I've commented to you about this, of just how far along it's come, where you guys are both getting good information out, you're taking the opportunity to have fun. I think you're making your department a little more personable, a little more in touch with kind of what's going on in the community. We've got a community dog, Bentley, right? Yeah. And the pictures that you guys put up of Bentley and doing different things out in the community. So. And I've shared this with Kellie a lot, that I really appreciate what I'm seeing out of the social media that's coming to the police department to really put a personal spin on who you guys are as police officers. I think it's really important that people in the community see all of us as public servants as people. Yeah. Because first and foremost, that's who we are.
Yeah. Yeah. They do a great job of kind of balancing the serious info that we need to get out, maybe for a public safety concern, and some crime prevention tips every now and then, some little whimsical kind of, lighthearted stuff to keep people coming back.
Yeah, so or the cops at the holidays out shopping.
Right.
Cops for kids, and and around the holidays, and that great work that happens through the unions and other things. So anyway, I wanted to highlight that because I talk to you about it a lot, and about how much I appreciate how far you guys have come and the work you're doing there. So I just wanted to say thank you for that.
No, thank you. Yep. once again, I'll take credit, but
Yeah.
it's the good work of my
Yeah.
of my staff. Yeah.
Well, let's give Chief Morris a bit of opportunity here. Yeah.
He was hoping.
Yeah.
He was hoping, right?
Yeah.
So it's strategic planning, and so yeah, we're probably I'll call it 75% of the way through a strategic planning process that we started earlier this year, and we've been really focused on trying to identify where we're at currently, what the community needs from us, and then how do we make sure that any gap between those two things that we close that gap as fast as we can, right? And and it's funny, I hear you talk about kind of your bigger strategic goals, and we have very similar ones, right? And so we've identified, the first and foremost thing is that, the vision of the organization, the vision of the fire department is to be a trusted leader in building and helping the city of Olympia be, a safe and healthy and robust, place for people to live and play and work. And so we want to make sure that everything we're doing is driving us towards that ultimate vision, right? And so our big goals is to exceed the community's expectations of us, right? And so whatever they expect or need from the fire department, we're going to do, and we're going to do it better than they expect us to. The second thing that we're going to do is we're going to take care of our folks, right? The health and wellness of our employees is really important. If we're going to be able to take care of the community, we've got to take care of ourselves. We're going to be resilient and sustainable, so we're going to find ways to keep ourselves relevant and up to date and current in our industry and in the community, and how do we sustain that over the long term, right? And so if we implement a program, how do we keep that program running? And the last thing is, we want to build trust in the community, right? And so at 2 a.m. when your house is on fire, we're going to show up and we're going to ask you to trust us, and that we're going to do good work for you, and we're going to do the things that need to be done to solve the problem. But what I want to do is build the trust there outside of that moment, right? And so as a fire department, we're going to be in the community building trust in everything we do. And so that way at 2 a.m. when you need us, you can trust us. You already know that you can trust us, right? And so those are kind of the goals we're trying to achieve. What we've identified pretty quickly is we've been really focused the last 6 months on trying to get our staffing levels back to where they need to be. We lost a lot of staff due to just kind of retirement and attrition, as well as the COVID process, and it made it really difficult to hire. And so our staffing levels fell way behind. And so we were significantly understaffed for a long time. And we're just now getting to where we're back to getting close to being where we need to be. We've implemented some couple of key programs in the last couple of years and starting to get those going, the CARES program and the ability to provide BLS transport, right, for ambulance transport in the city. As those start to come online, we need to make sure that they're sustainable and resilient, and that they stand up against, outside things that may challenge those. And so, we're just really focused on those kinds of things. And we're just starting to put together the list of, okay, we've talked about why we're doing it, and we're talking about, what we're trying to accomplish, but now we're really talking about how we're going to do those things. And so, that's kind of where we're at now and what we need to accomplish. And, an example is, one of the things we're going to get accomplished is a really comprehensive community risk analysis. We need to get our arms around where's the risk in the community as it kind of pertains to what the fire service offers. What's the risk and how are we addressing that risk, and are we addressing it as it should be addressed? And just, again, looking for those gaps. And so we have a lot of opportunity in there. We've got our organizational structures kind of set up, and we've got some staffing online. The BLS transport's coming online right now. And so a lot of great things happening. But as we look to the future and that long-term, and I like how you said that, Chief, is that long-term, keep your heads up looking at the horizon at all times, so that way we're not caught off guard and we're not reactive. Police and fire are both really good at responding to things. I would prefer to be more proactive about the vision and the leadership and the direction of the organization, and not be a reactive organization. So it's been a difficult last several years, right, with the pandemic and just the challenges that we've seen in our community, and trying to stay ahead of those things and predict those things, I think, is going to be really key to our success in the future. To your point, we use a lot of data, right? We measure a lot of different things, and one of the things that we're talking about and really leaning into is the ability to measure outcomes. Not just outputs, but outcomes, right? If we say we want a safer and healthier community, how do we measure that?
Yep.
How do we prove that part, right? We can talk about the number of calls we go on. We can talk about our response times, and all that together tells a bigger story, right? Those are key indicators that we track. But when we put it all together, what does that tell us? And so that's what we're really focused on, providing that more comprehensive, understanding of how the fire department's doing in your community. So,
Well, Chief, one of the things that as you came on board, I said, hey, job number one is staffing.
yeah,
Because I heard
absolutely.
that quite
Yeah,
clearly
yeah,
from the employees during the chief hiring process. And I just want to give you just a lot of kudos for coming in and focusing on that and getting caught up and getting it done. Both of you, and we're going to talk about recruitment later, but both of you, recruiting and keeping your staffing levels at where they are is probably the hardest part of what you guys do, and keeping those staff levels. If you don't have the right staff, that's where you get the overtime. That's where you got people doing other jobs. And so I appreciate where your focus was coming in the door, and you also got right to work on some strategic planning. And the other chief, Alan, knows this. I'm a data guy, so I love the stories about working on data, right? And data to tell our stories. And it's really powerful and important, I think, for all of us to have the data that we need to both justify the work that we do and also justify the requests we have of our community when we have to ask them for more, right? So I think it's really important. And just as we worked on Prop 1 with the county to get more funding for OPD, we do have funding gaps in the fire department. We still don't have everything funded the way we'd like to.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's the things that we identify, right? Is that long-term sustainability piece and being resilient is about having enough and adequate reserve funding and the ability to replace equipment as it's needed. And most of the equipment we all have, have shelf lives, right? They apparatus only lasts so long, air packs only last so long. They all have to be replaced, and when they do, they're very expensive. And so we should be anticipating that in advance of, and so we should be funding our reserves and our replacement accounts well in advance, and so that way when it comes time to need those things, it doesn't have such an impact on the city and other services in the city potentially, right? And so we've identified those things for sure. Our ability to provide services throughout the city and meet kind of performance criteria is really in our ability to deploy our resources in a strategic way around the city and then meet the demand for services. And we've seen a huge increase in that demand and service in the last 5 or 6 years in the city. And the impact of that and our ability to be not only available for the call so that when an emergency happens, the closest resource that's supposed to get it gets it.
Yep.
And then once they get it, are they able to get there in the response time performance that we expect them to get it in, right? And so we want to keep both of those high. That availability and reliability piece really becomes, an indicator of our ability to provide services. And we really saw both of those take a pretty good hit in the last 5 or 6 years and really see a decrease in our availability and reliability. And then as we brought on these BLS transport units, we're seeing all of those start to trend back up. I think the impact of CARES will will play into that as well. And so now we're starting to see, the ability for fire engines or transport units or aid units or other resources, the ability for them to get the call they're supposed to get. Because as soon as you have to get a resource from across one side of the city to the other side, it's going to take a lot longer to get there, right? And so, that's what we're really just focused on is that sustainability piece. So.
Good.
Well, Chief Allen, spent a lot of time with the community around reimagining public safety. You want to talk about a little bit about how the progress is going around that work?
Sure. Well, you're right. We did. The city and the police department spent a lot of time with the community talking about reimagining public safety. And it's important, at least I think it's important, to remember that it is the entire public safety system, right?
Yes.
It's not just the police department. There's some things for the court system, for the city in general.
Jail
right?
alternatives and
Exactly. So as far as the police department, I've always said that the department is an open book and we're committed to transparency. So I think that's one of the biggest takeaways for me, is maintaining that, right? We're an open book. We got no secrets. Look at whatever we're doing. That's totally fine with us. So we will always do that and we'll always be transparent. specifically in the reimagining, employee wellness was called out.
It was.
And I think we made some good strides that we talked about earlier with our wellness efforts. And I appreciate that. I appreciate that the community called that out. Not only does the community care about our employees, but they also recognize that an employee who feels burnt out or who feels not supported isn't going to give the best service, right?
Yep.
Right.
So,
Absolutely.
so they made that one of their priorities. So that was one of the first things we did was employee wellness and staffing. Examining the staffing levels was another recommendation from the reimagining public safety in both of our departments.
Because
have done
the understaffed piece really plays into the employee wellness.
Yeah,
It really has a negative impact on employee wellness when you're understaffed and overworked.
Yep.
It's a
And
big deal.
especially in our line of work, right? We have to provide 24-hour service to the community, and that involves minimum staffing levels. It's not that, in other jobs, if your coworker's on vacation, you might have some extra work to do. Well, that's not the way it works in our line of work. When your when your coworker's on vacation, you have to find another employee from another area to bring over to fill in that spot. And all of that filling in on those empty spots, that's what leads to burnout and fatigue. And to your point, that's huge. So we both undertook the staffing, and I think we're getting there. We got some good plans going. Building stronger relationships with the community. Our strategic plan absolutely spells that out through the communication, and our community academy is a big piece of that. Using data.
Yep.
Jay likes data, right?
guy.
You can't take the public works engineer thing out of him. So data's a big thing. We're going to use data to tell our story, and it's important.
Yep.
So I got you.
I was going to say, you talked about your transparency piece too, and data is a big piece of that, right? Talking about what you see and opening people up into kind of what you guys are looking at and how you're making decisions is a big part of transparency.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Comparing this area of town to another area 2 years ago, right? And seeing how things are progressing. So data's huge.
Yeah.
And
Data allows us to listen, right? Allows us to listen to what the community is telling us. The data tells us a story as to what's occurring in our community.
Yep.
And then how do we best meet those needs, right? And how do we perform there for them? So, I mean, the data will lead the way for sure.
And it's an easy snapshot, right?
Yeah, right,
Sometimes you can just take a quick look at data and you can get some an idea of performance measures. And we're working with communications right now to develop a dashboard that'll be public facing on the internet, so people can take a look at that and get some, hopefully as real time as we can get it, a glimpse at our crime stats, our response rates, all that kind of stuff. So hopefully that'll get going here pretty soon. Another one was expanding the use of unarmed responders.
Yeah, kind of
or
alternative programs.
So fire has the CARES. We have CREW, the Crisis Response Unit. So as you guys know, one of the things we did as a city was we really took a look at downtown and we evaluated the programs that we had down there. And we made the determination that our ambassador program was great, but it might have been a better fit to have trained crisis responders down there. So that's what we did. We added 2 crisis responders who are downtown on foot, walking around, providing the service to people. We have our Familiar Faces program, and we're going to expand that. Our Familiar Faces is, right now it's 2. They are peer navigators, who are people who have lived experiences, either mostly with the criminal justice system, that have found some success and have turned it around. And they're guiding people through not only the criminal justice process, but really life in general, to give them some guidance and suggestions on how to be successful. So we're going to add to that program as well. we're making good progress.
Chief Morris, why don't we talk about your alternative programs too? I mean, this is a question we were going to get to later, but
Sure.
Chief Allen just kind of started to talk about that through Reimagining.
Yeah.
So why don't you talk about your alternatives? You mentioned BLS, which is basic life support.
Right. So that's the lower acuity level calls, right? And the ability to take somebody to the hospital to get the definitive treatment that they need doesn't always require the level of a paramedic level transport.
Yeah.
Right. It's not life threatening, but they still need to go to the hospital. And so the ability to do that in a timely fashion and with a strong continuity of care, the people that picked you up are also the same people that take you to the hospital. It really is a high level. It's a premier level of service in the city, right? Is to be able to offer that to the community. And then in addition, what that does for us also is it adds more depth to our resources. So like I talked about earlier, now that fire engine is now available more often because that ambulance is taking that call that the fire engine would have had to take.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's improving the ripple effect in that system and creates a greater capacity or redundancy in the system. So it benefits in all areas, right?
Yep.
And then our alternative to traditional response or traditional services is our CARES program. That's a community assistance and referral education. And so what that's really focused on is we recognize that the community speaks and we listen. And one of the things the community says is we have needs. People call 911 when there's something's happened in their life that they can't manage anymore. And sometimes the solution to that is an ambulance ride to the hospital.
Yep.
Sometimes the solution is not the right solution, and that the better solution is getting you connected to long-term care, or getting you connected to social services, or getting you connected to these other non-traditional services that an emergency room is not best suited for.
Right.
And simply taking an emergency room doesn't benefit anybody. And so that's what CARES is really about, is trying to connect people in the community that have urgent needs that aren't really solved by a hospital or an emergency room. Sometimes that's housing, sometimes that's nutrition, sometimes that's senior services, things like that, right? And so that CARES program really is a social work outreach opportunity to really kind of solve people's needs in the community, in a non-traditional way. So pretty excited about it. It's going to make a big impact.
Yeah, well, Chief Allen, you talked about at the beginning, your opening comments was about let's send the right resource based on the call, right? And so sometimes it's police and sometimes it's fire. And even within police and fire, there's different tools in your toolbox now that you didn't have 5, 6, 7 years ago, which are these alternative responses. And you're looking at things even like an unarmed response, community safety officers do some other jobs is something you're looking at in the future. I know you have a vision for that.
I do. And I really want to get the building blocks in place now.
Yeah.
Community service officers, we're going to hire a couple of those. And they're going to be a combination of, the first couple are going to be armed, but they're really dealing with the courts and that type of thing. My vision is to expand that program and hire unarmed community service officers, and they will assist after a scene is stabilized by police officers. They'll assist by taking someone out to the Nisqually jail, for instance, if needed. They'll be able to respond to accidents and assist with traffic control.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I'll be able to expand that program where they can respond to crimes that are not in progress. That doesn't require an armed police officer. Now I want to manage expectations with that. There's a lot of things, a lot of steps I got to do before I can make that happen. But that's my vision.
Yeah.
I think we have a good shot at getting there.
Yeah. Well, Chief, before we shift topics, the last thing I wanted to talk about around reimagining, there's also this accountability piece. And we've worked with the council, the community. We've got an auditor now that's hired by the council. And for another episode, we're going to talk about community oversight of law enforcement, because that's an action the council just took, and it's a lot of community engagement there. But one of the things I just wanted to highlight is your department and you as a leader haven't shied away from those conversations around accountability. You've been there with council as they've looked to hire an auditor. You've fully participated with the community work group and the Social Justice and Equity Commission around a community oversight of law enforcement. So accountability is something that's part of reimagining, and you've been there every step of the way.
We've always been that way. Accountability is huge, right? And it all goes to the public trust. I've said this before, but with the exception of 3 dogs, all of my employees are human, and humans are going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
And we know that. And if we make a mistake, we're going to fix it if we can, and take steps to make sure or help make sure that that doesn't happen again. And typically that's through some kind of training and maybe some discipline. It all leads to public trust, and public trust is essential for what we do. And it's not just some fancy thing that we put on the walls of our offices. Community trust is everything for us. And if the community doesn't trust us, they're not going to call us when they're being victimized. They're not going to call us when they think they're seeing a crime occur. They're not going to call us. They're not going to trust us to get us involved in what we need to be involved in. And then we're simply not able to do our mission.
Yeah.
So accountability has always been important to us. And we have a lot of levels of accountability. Not only do we have our internal professional standards office, we have a lieutenant that looks at every use of force, looks at every complaint, makes sure that they're properly investigated. Then we have the police auditor that you mentioned that looks at all of our professional standards work and make sure that it's done properly.
Along with policies and procedures, they look at all of that with you.
100%. And then we also have the state. We have the Criminal Justice Training Commission that issues our certifications, and we're accountable to them. They can come in at any point and investigate us and suspend certifications and even decertify officers if it's called for.
Yep.
So we have a lot of levels of accountability. We've never shied away from it. And like I said, we're an open book, and it's just part of the job.
Yep.
I've been thinking, you guys talked about your path to this work, this line of work, this industry. I also talked about building departments and agencies that are strong and forward-leaning and forward-thinking for today and for the future. So in terms of recruiting people for these incredible departments you're building, can you talk a little bit about the work and why your departments are just wonderful places to work?
It's your recruiting pitch.
Make your pitch. Make your pitch.
Absolutely. I think the thing that separates, organizations, right, is the ability for the organization to represent itself true to its values, right? And so that you walk the walk and you talk the talk. And so, when we're trying to recruit folks, what we're trying to do is we're trying to show them and remove the obstacles and demonstrate to them that this is a line of work you can do. And that while you may perceive that this isn't something that you could do or that it's not something that it would ever be able to do, it really is. And so it's about getting out in the community and talking to them and sharing them what the work's really like, right? A lot of people have perceptions and they see things, but that's not necessarily a true indicator of what the day-to-day work really is. And so, that recruitment effort is just about trying to build the relationships,
Yeah.
right? and remove obstacles and make it more tenable for people to take a swing for it, right? And that it's actually dream big and go big, right? And, and then if their personal values, the things that they believe in, and they have a drive to serve, and they have a heart for compassion and taking care of people and serving people, if that's who they are, then they will line up with our values really well. And like we said before, we can teach you how to do the work, right? How to do the job is we can teach you all day long. Why you want to do the job, I can't teach that to you, right? You've got to bring that with you.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we're just out there trying to build those connections, right? And so, it's an interesting time. I mean, I never thought we would ever have trouble recruiting firefighters or even police officers for that matter. You never thought that we would have trouble. I mean, there was a time when you'd have 6,000 people line up for 6 jobs. And it's just not that way anymore, right? And so I think what we have to do is just really be transparent and really build some relationships out in the community and just show that, it's an opportunity that a lot of people can do if they have the heart for it. So.
everyone is competing for the same applicants. There are so many public safety openings in the region. Everyone's competing for the same people. And for me, it's always been our employees have been the best recruiters for us,
Yeah.
right? They either see somebody in the community and they strike up a conversation and the person started asking about police work and that's how they get involved, or they know somebody. But our employees have always been the best recruiters for us. And why should they come and work in Olympia? It's absolutely the people.
Yeah.
The people are the biggest draw. The not just in the police and fire, but the whole city organization is just a great group of people who are dedicated to the community, and that's the biggest draw.
Yeah, and
I think.
if you want to do the work and you really want to serve and touch people's lives, there's plenty of that here for you.
Yeah.
Right? You will have plenty of opportunity to have the impact and do the work and feel the fulfillment of actually, making a difference in some people's lives, working here, right? And the city of Olympia is a very special and unique place. It really presents a very urban, big city challenges at times, but yet it doesn't feel like that at other times, right? And so there's plenty of work to be done here. And so if that speaks to your heart, this is a great place to be.
I've said that several times. We're a medium-ish city with big city problems.
Right.
And so, yeah, that does, I mean, some people are attracted to that. So that does help. Something you said made me think about it. One of the lines at the police academy that they have is they're trying to train people to have the heart of a humanitarian with, with the fist of a warrior. And that's really what we've been seeing in the applicant pool. The people that are coming here, they just have the heart of a humanitarian, and if that's what you have, then Olympia is absolutely the place for you.
Yeah. I agree with that.
So if I'm listening to this great pitch on this podcast, and I think this is the place I want to go, how do I start?
The city's webpage it has all the information you need for it, and we run regular ongoing recruitments. I mean, I know
We both
the
use.
same way.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
We both use public safety testing, and that's a company that facilitates our testing process for us. So, public safety testing, and start clicking Olympia. You'll get one of us.
Right now the fire department, we're still understaffed in paramedics, and so if there's paramedics out there listening to this and you want to work in a challenging system and have an impact and make a difference, we've got work for you. So
and
please apply.
right now we have 6 openings, and with the Prop 1 funding, we should have about 9 more.
I was going to say 8 or 9 more.
Yep. Yeah.
Coming,
So we'll be hiring deep into next year. Yeah.
Good. All right, Chiefs, we're down the home stretch here. Our last couple of questions are really future focused. So as you think about the next 5 years, we've talked a lot about your strategic plans, but just kind of on a personal level, what are your hopes and dreams as you think about your departments over the next 5 years? What are you excited about? What are you worried about? What's it look like 5 years from now? If everything happens the way you hope it will, what's that look like?
That's a great question. Well, I think you talk a lot in an organization. You talk a lot about success and being successful, right? And I think, success is really just defined by the people that are working there, right? And I think for me, my greatest hope is that the people that work for the Olympia Fire Department feel valued, feel supported, feel connected to the work they're doing, and that the work they're doing actually matters and is making a difference, right? That they don't feel like that they're wasting their time or wasting their energy. That's a successful organization. When you have a workforce that believes that and truly believes in what they're doing, then from that point on, you can do anything you want.
Yeah.
Right. And I think as we look to the future, we have some things we need to get done. We need to get the right staffing levels. We need to make sure that our training division's adequately supported. We need to make sure that all of our infrastructure and support and like we talked about, the replacement accounts and the reserve accounts are all properly funded, and so that we have the equipment and the training that we need, so that way the employee can feel supported. But the culture of the organization is really wants to be about success and wants to be about where people come to work. They're excited to come to work because they believe in what they're doing.
Yeah.
And that's, that's the future that I dream about.
It's good.
5 years. I hope we're fully staffed. It's taken a while to get there, but hopefully in
Hey,
5
so
years we'll be
Chief,
there.
I've been here for 25 years, and I don't know if you've ever told me in any one year that you've been
Yeah.
fully staffed.
Yeah, so I was the hiring and training sergeant for a couple of years.
Right.
And we had about a 5-minute period where we were fully staffed once. And then literally we hired somebody and then 5 minutes later someone announced their retirement. So
Right.
that's the closest we've been in a long
Yeah.
time.
Well, that's the challenge, right? Is when we have a vacancy, it takes anywhere from 12 to 18 months to get that position filled, trained, and back into the staffing model.
Yeah,
And so
Yep.
we're always behind.
always
Yeah.
behind the
Yeah.
eight ball on that. So that's one of my hopes. I hope we're fully staffed. I really do hope we secure some funding for a West Side station. If I could have a wish list, we'd have a training center. Our training center was closed down a couple years ago, and right now we're scrambling to find that. So that would be on my wish list for 5 years from now. Hopefully secure some funding for that. This isn't what you asked, but one of the things that keeps me up at night a
Yeah.
little bit
Yeah.
is the safety of the employees. We both have
100%.
staff that work extremely dangerous jobs, and if you have children who are driving age,
Yes.
and you get kind of that uneasiness, right? If once they start going things on their own, and going places and doing their own thing, there's an uneasiness that sets, and you're always thinking, right? And that's a big thing. That never goes away. You're on vacation, you're at home, you're always thinking, man, I just hope they're okay.
You want everyone to get home safe to their
100%.
families. And
Yeah.
And you
yeah.
can't GPS them like I do my kids.
No,
It's hard to track them.
we could, but the union might say something
Yeah.
about that.
yeah, you might not like the Life 360 circle.
Yeah.
Well, it's one of those catch-22s. It's fantastic to finally get our staffing levels up and to get all these new people hired, but that means we have a lot of new people,
Yeah.
right? I mean, over 25% of the Olympia Fire Department is less than 2 years on the job.
Yeah.
And so when we ask about what makes you nervous is I have a lot of really highly trained, motivated, energized employees with very little experience. And experience is kind of an important piece to that, right? And so we replace experience with training. So we train a lot and constantly to try to gain experience.
So you've talked about kind of from employee focus, what your hope is in 5 years. What's your hopes for the community in the next 5 years?
We're working a lot on trust. I think the vast majority of our community trusts us. But hopefully in the next 5 years, everyone will feel comfortable calling us, feel comfortable calling 911 when they need it. That would make me happy.
I mean, that's right on point. I think that, the community in 5 years is safer, healthier, and or more vibrant than it is today, right? And that's our vision, is that we're always, we'll never be able to say that we're all the way there, right? We're always have room for improvement, but that the standard of living, the conditions, the community, the culture is better, safer, more vital than it is today in 5 years, right? Because of the work we do and the trust that the community has in us, right? And that we've earned from them, because, trust is a feeling and we have to earn it from them. And we're just going to keep doing that every day.
Yeah. That's great. Well, hey, that is our show for you today. Just really appreciate both of you being here today and taking the time with us on the podcast. And just thank you so much for both what you both do personally and for everything that your teams do to keep our community safe. I value and I appreciate you both.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
It was a fun conversation. Now I know where you are in birth order. That makes me.
All right. Thanks,
Great.
Chiefs.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Yeah, appreciate it.
With that, Kelly, I think it's a wrap. Why don't you bring us home?
Okay, well, we would normally do a mailbag about
Yes.
this time, but we had such a rich, long conversation with the chiefs that we're running a little longer than we usually do. So we're going to save it until next month. So
How about we promise 2 mailbag questions?
we
next
will
time?
do 2 mailbag questions next time.
Deal.
See you in August with 2 of them. So first of all, I want to thank everyone for listening. Thank you, Olympia community. We want to also let you know where you can find us. You can find the Actually Olympia podcast everywhere you find a podcast, from Apple to Spotify. If you want to spell Spotify with a Z, so it's A to Z, but you can find it anywhere. Also, there's a video version of the podcast on olytv3.com. You can also download the Oly TV app on your device because it's really good and you can watch it from there. You can send us your questions. The podcast is a touch point for our community, so please do hit us up. It might be one of the 2 questions from the mailbag for next month. Also, we ask you to show us a little love, subscribe to the podcast, leave a rating and a review. Recommend the podcast to your friends and family, by the way.
Need some clicks.
We need the clicks. And also, we want to invite you to stay connected to the City of Olympia. So visit our website and subscribe to our e-news and find extra resources and information there. Also, you can follow us on social media. Finally, send us topics for future podcasts because we want to make sure we're relevant and talking about the things you want to hear about the City of Olympia. So thank you again to the chiefs, to our crew who keeps us going and moving forward. And with that, I think we're done.
I think we're done.
All
Join us next month. Our guest is going to be Dr. Pamela Braff. We're going to talk about climate programs.
Absolutely. All right.
Looking forward to that.
Looking forward to that. So be well, Olympia.
All right.
All right.